Welcome to the Digible Dudes Podcast. I'm David.
I'm Reed.
Reed, it's 8:47 in the morning, so I expect you to carry us here. As you've now publicly stated that you're good in the mornings or not in the afternoons, and I'm kind of the reverse.
Well, important qualifier there. I said after I've had my cup of coffee and had at least one conversation. And you are my first conversation, and I have only had 3 sips of my coffee. So, I don't know how this is going to go. And you happen to pick a Wednesday morning, which is a morning I get to sleep till 7:30 because our girls have late start. So it's their one day of the week where we don't have to rush out to the bus at 7:15.
Wow. See, I always just thought school was consistent. So when you sent me that Slack, I was like, I didn't really understand what you're meaning. Like, it's not like high school where it's like, oh, I get to skip first period or something. So yeah.
I know. I think it's great that they do that. I mean, truly, every parent I know in our neighborhood loves it, but I didn't have it. I'm sure you didn't either. So I don't know if it's a Colorado thing because we both grew up in Texas, but it's a smart idea. What sucks, I'll just say, is that they decided to give the older kids a later start, literally, like on a regular basis, and they bumped up the elementary. And they're obviously not in the same school, but they just, through research, and the superintendent for Littleton School Districts has had to defend this like probably way more than he'd like. But he's like, it just, young kids can get up and be with it, before, teens. They're just inherently like, he didn't say inherently, he went to the research, but all the parents are like, are you kidding me? My little kid needs sleep. They're totally dysfunctional in the morning, blah, blah, blah. So take the good with the bad, I guess.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see, like, has the wardrobe of the young kids changed at all? Now it's like the parents like, sure, go ahead, wear the rain boots to school. I don't give a damn.
Yeah.
And also, talk about a job I would never want, to be a superintendent of a school district. Man, I would. It sounds like a nightmare.
Well, nightmare times 1,000 for the pandemic. I mean, the last year and a half, definitely would not want that job. As far as the wardrobe, we pretty much gave in on that one fairly early. So, we decided that our kids were very trendy. And that's just a, excuse me, nice way of putting, I'm trying to think, design challenged. I'm not, like I said, 3 sips here of coffee, but some pretty interesting outfits, I'll say, that walk out the door. But, what are you going to do? Who cares, right? You don't have to worry about that stuff. That's the beauty of elementary school. Most people aren't judging you yet.
Is the Adam Sandler movie Big Daddy or whatever, where he like inherits the kid for a second and he's just like letting him wear flippers around or whatever? I feel like that would be me.
I haven't seen that one. I'm hit or miss with Sandler. But I mean, he has some great ones. I don't know if I've seen Big Daddy.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I think you might get a kick out of that one. But I actually didn't think you would go for Sandler at all. So the fact that you're hit or miss, I don't know. There's some hope, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the Happy Gilmore and I think Waterboy. I still have a soft or a funny bone for just good physical humor, comedic humor. And those are pretty classic.
Yeah. Well, we're here to do our intro on an interview we recorded a couple weeks ago, but Jennifer from Pynwheel. So she's the founder of Pynwheel. I think folks listening to this have probably heard of Pynwheel over the last couple of years, but they started as a sort of a smart screen technology for the leasing office, and now they've added on virtual self-guided tours. I guess actually self-guided tours, but do they have virtual tours, Reed, or is it just self-guided?
I believe they have virtual tours. Shame on us.
Yeah, we talked primarily about the self-guided because that's where they're really pushing the envelope, and they're first to market with several things in that area.
Yeah, and kudos to Jennifer and the team, for getting a leg up. It's become a very, very competitive space in a short amount of time, and understandably so. But I know she was super excited to share with us, the kind of breakthrough on the hardware side of things so that you don't have to reinstall or change out all your fobs in order to make the technology work. And that's one of the bigger impediments she shared with us, both from a cost standpoint and also just, the disruption that it causes on site. So I think that's awesome that they were able to figure that out, and now they're going to try and get as much mileage as they can out of it, and rightfully so. And I will say, I don't use this word very often, lovely, but I just find Jennifer to be lovely. She's always been so accommodating and welcoming to us. We met her very early on when we started Digible. She's here in Denver, and so we got a chance to have coffee with her and meet her a couple times at some of our first conferences that we went to. And she's just a great person. She really has been super helpful for us, making some contacts and giving us feedback, and just being a fan, So I'm really happy to see that Pynwheel is, not just around, but seems to be flourishing and in a great position to do some great things in the self-guided tour space.
Totally. And one of the things that I thought was most interesting, that I don't know if her team gets full credit for from the marketplace, but is how systematic they've worked on their back-end procedures. So you hit that in the episode, but she's like, oh no, we could onboard 1,000 properties in basically like a month. Like essentially, they've worked really hard to hone their internal process. And a lot of that comes from the technology that they're pioneering. But a lot of these other self-guided tour companies, they have to do a lot of hardware installation on site, which requires, juggling quite a bit. But Pynwheel doesn't have that. You can do, as she talks about in the episode, you can just use your current smart locks. They can make a quick modification to it. And then from there, like they've basically got it handled. So it allows them to just like crank out onboarding, which I think is probably a real differentiator, particularly as like people in the pandemic and out of the pandemic are trying to roll this out across portfolios.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a great call out, like about the ability to scale. That surprised me, because I believe she said that it takes 2 weeks, like typically to onboard, which I don't find to be a tremendously long amount of time given what they're doing. But she said, to your point, that if they needed to, they could do basically 1,000 all at once. So it's not an incremental, like stacked, 14 days or 2 weeks. So pretty impressive.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, anything else you want to hit on the conversation before we let people get into the interview?
I guess not. I say that, and then I'm going to say something else. Classic. But I think the KPIs, how they're measuring the effectiveness of this is really interesting, and meaning it goes a little bit beyond the obvious, which is, well, how did our leasing improve or not improve? Did our conversion rates improve? There's a little bit more depth to that, like when we asked her that question, and how they set expectations, all the rest. And then predictions, I thought was also fun to hear her talk about, just how fast is this going to pick up? Because it hasn't moved as we might have expected, but now that's just always a recurring theme, I feel like, when we talk about, emerging technology or prop tech. So everybody's pretty used to that, but it seems like, especially with, frankly, the new technology they're bringing to market, that we could see this really take off, like legitimately in the next couple of years. So it'll be fascinating to see how that all plays out in comparison with what her predictions were on this podcast.
Yeah, I think it's also as the consumers get used to it. So I forget who I was talking to the other day, but I had a conversation where I was like, I can't believe in some instances single families in front of multifamily, where it's like you have people that are like, oh, I'm going to do a self-guided tour on a single family, or I'm going to do my, I think the example I was using was mortgage transaction online, like, just quickly on an app on my phone or whatever. But when it comes to like online leasing, it's not as robust or not as common, right? And so I think once it's one of those things where it's like when the entire industry resists it, it's not that much of a differentiator because consumers aren't looking for it. They're not like, oh, self-guided tour, totally. But once it sort of hits the, I don't know, the mind of the consumers, like at large, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going to do a search just for self-guided tour properties, or like online leasing where I can go all the way through on my phone in a very easy manner. And then it's back to your word of the month, as I've been razzing you, but table stakes at that point, right? Like it's a requirement. So I think that
you're supposed to play a drop right there. That would have been perfect.
Oh yeah. Hang on. We got this new function. Yeah. There you go.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, last thing on this, I promise. I'm curious about the ripple effect if it does take off the way we're predicting. We've talked to obviously a lot of different corners of the industry. And I still think back to the conversation we had with the apartment locator. And then, obviously the on-site team, like the leasing agent. Is this going to not displace, but how much of a disruption will this be if this really takes off? Because operators are always looking, and they should be, for opportunities to save money. And the locator seems more and more to me, I'm not saying that's fair or right, but as kind of an archaic, model, given all the new technology and comfort, to your point. But if this were to become like ordering a pizza, right, where yes, some people still call, but most people don't. It's like, really? You're still picking up the phone to order a pizza? Like, just go online. It's such a smooth process. But if it were to get that kind of traction, then that would have major implications on some roles that have been around for a long time.
Yeah, I don't see it going away, right? That I think that's the main thing, right? Like
Right, I agree. Yeah.
Before it was like it is now the time for it to take off, and the pandemic has certainly accelerated that. Now it's like, well, you almost like can't. I told you I've been reading the most recent book covering Amazon, and they say that Jeff Bezos has a saying. He says, is this a one-way door or a two-way door? One-way door is like you can't go back through it. Like it's only one way. So yeah, that's what this is. Like you can't go back once you have it.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, yeah, I think you guys will find this one interesting. So thanks, Jennifer, for taking the time, and hope you guys enjoy. Okay, we're here with Jennifer Cyphers, founder of Pynwheel. And Jennifer, I feel like I shouldn't try to do this. I'll just let you try to give your own background. But we were just talking, and you're saying that you incorporated Pynwheel, you think about 8 years ago, almost to the day. We'll say to the month. But were you the only one at the time, or did you have any other co-founders?
It was just me. It was just me and literally $3,000 that I borrowed from my mom to put into a bank account and start Pynwheel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you give us your background before Pynwheel, and then what caused you to get into Pynwheel and get started in what it is today? So that's a lot, but now I'm super excited to hear about this $3,000. So go for it.
Right. Well, I started in the multifamily industry in 1999, not to date myself, but I was in school actually doing pre-med requirements. So I was fulfilling my pre-med requirements because I was going to go back to school to go to medical school. And while I was in school doing pre-med requirements, I got a job with a startup tech company that was servicing the multifamily industry, and got promoted a couple times within a few months, and then ended up in a position where I was traveling a lot and couldn't support going to school at the same time. And so then my career just took off in this other way that I never really expected. So needless to say, I did not end up going to medical school, and still here I am in the multifamily industry decades later, which I think a lot of people have a similar story where they're like, I just got this job and now here I am decades later, still in the multifamily industry.
Yeah, well, Reed and I often joke that will we ever be able to escape orbit and get the hell out? And I think now Reed is settled with no, we're stuck with gravity. Do I have that wrong, Reed?
Lean into it. Yeah.
No, so, I don't think it's a bad thing. Some days, I find myself daydreaming about other categories and doing other things, but for the most part, I'm really happy with it. Before you go too much further, though, I have to know, what kind of doctor were you planning to be?
Oh, pediatric psychiatry.
That's what my dad did.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he did it for like 30 years. He was when he went through med school, he thought he was going to be a radiologist or something. And, funny enough, it's his birthday too. He passed 3 years ago. I shouted him out this morning on Roundup because a lot of the reason that I think Digible exists, maybe more than David knows, but it comes from my dad. He's or was quite a dreamer, loved the abstract, if you will, and was a risk taker. And when he went through med school, he just really felt a calling when he went through the psychiatric component, and in particular with kids. He always had a passion for kids, and so he did that, and
had a 40-year practice, and it was super fulfilling. It was amazing. And I don't think I've ever heard anybody else say that, because he told me, he was like, Reed, you think like the specialists like do the best, but not when it comes to pediatric psychiatry. It's like there's less than like 1,000 in the whole country, and they're desperately needed, but they're underpaid. I mean, he did fine, but it was just, it's one of those, I guess MDs that a lot of people don't know about. That is wild, Jim.
So niche. That is so interesting. Well, I majored in psychology and foreign languages in college, and psych was, through psych, I worked with kids. I did internships and stuff. Well, more, not internships, but programs, volunteer programs with kids. And I had no intention of doing anything with psychology. I always intended to go into business. But then my senior year, I took a physiological psych class. So the biological component of psychology, and I loved it. It was fascinating. And so then when I went back and did all my pre-med requirements. I loved it. I loved that side of it. So
that's wild. I'm going to share that with my sisters to, they've been texting me all day, just, thinking about Dad, but that'll blow their mind. Yeah.
Well, did you stay at the same company then, Jen, from like 99 through like, you said 8 years ago or so for Pynwheel, so like whatever, the teens?
That would be impressive. That was not my career path. No, I ended up a few years later at Apartment Guide, and I was the director of apartmentguide.com. So that was back when Apartment Guide had books in the grocery store, and the company was set up in two different organizations really within one company. And one was the interactive organization, and one was the publication or the book organization. So I ran the interactive part and the website. Can you hold on?
Yeah, we'll hold. It sounds like you got a puppy that wants.
I do have a puppy. 1 second.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need some sort of filler, like, and it can't be Jeopardy. Some other like Digible Dudes, like,
It needs to sound like the like Looney Tunes when you're just like waiting for like the time to go through.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, sorry about that. We have pandemic puppies. We adopted 2 puppies because of the pandemic, and now now they're always in the background on calls.
Yeah, no worries. So you were at Apartment Guide, where they sell books in the grocery store.
Did your time overlap with Dennis from AIM? Didn't he, or was he not Apartment Guide? I thought he was like.
My time did not overlap with him if he was there. I feel like so many people in the industry have spent time at RentPath that too much everyone was there, but I was not there at the same time as Dennis. And I was working in Atlanta because that's where, or Norcross really, which is where it's based, but I didn't move from Denver. So I was flying to Atlanta, commuting to Atlanta from Denver, which I do not recommend because the time change doesn't do any favors. So I did that. And then after I left Apartment Guide, I started a business that was 2 parts. Half of it was doing consulting with companies like Vast, which is a company that has a search engine. It's a white labeled search engine, and it was founded by Deval Ravikant and Kevin Laws, who then ended up founding AngelList. And I worked with Apartment List when they were brand new, and it was just Chris and John, and helped them get that started. And I worked with Facebook Marketplace. It used to be run by Oodle. Now it's run by Facebook. So I did a lot of that and spent a lot of time in San Francisco. And then the other half of it was acting as a digital agency for the multifamily industry, which you guys might know a little bit about. And then I actually, the company that I hired to do my branding, like my website, my business cards, my logo, that kind of stuff, was a company called Creativity for Rent. And I ended up merging Multifamily Edge, which was my company, with Creativity for Rent, and we created Ingrain. And so I started Ingrain, and we mostly were an agency, did websites and that kind of stuff, did a few touch screens. And then when I left, I started Pynwheel. And one of the first things that we did was to productize the the touchscreen product. So we made it a SaaS product that had a central management system, a central dashboard, so that we could onboard a high volume of properties and sold the touchscreen product that way. So that was in 2012 that we built that, and we took it to market in 2013. And the first business trip, I worked with Steve Denis, who was helping with sales, and we were selling these really heavy tables. They were touchscreen tables that would go in leasing offices. So the idea was that people would sit at the tables and they could look at the interactive map and they could start their application and do everything at this big interactive touchscreen table. And so it was massive. I can't remember. It was probably like 500 pounds. And we rented a U-Haul and we took this table to all of these different offices in multifamily. And we would have to go up and like get dollies and move it up into the office. We're just like vagabonding around California within a U-Haul. So that's how we started.
Jennifer, I don't know what kind of business plan you did, but how you thought you could do a touchscreen company with $3,000 from your mom. Because Reed and I, we were just looking at like smart screens for the office, and they're $3,000. And Reed was like, these will probably be like $500 2 years from now. He didn't go that far. He probably said $1,000 less. But I don't know, like, what was your what got you the itch to go start another company? And then, I mean, $3,000. It's not, that doesn't go very far. Let alone like the incorporation documents and stuff. Let alone the tech.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we had to start selling right away. My itch was to do something. There were other reasons why it made sense for me to leave my partnership with Ingrain, but my itch to start Pynwheel was that I am a product person. That's my background. So building a SaaS product and always working on making it better is a better fit for me and my experience and what I'm interested in than doing one-off projects for clients and then they own it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I wanted to do with Pynwheel. And the other thing is that, my background had been in marketing for so long. And I feel like in the multifamily industry, there are a lot of ways, which again, you guys know better than anybody, there are a lot of ways to get people to an apartment when they're looking for a property, to help them find apartments, to help them narrow it down. Obviously, some products work better than others, but there's a lot out there. There are a lot of options out there. And then once somebody walks into a property, all of that goes away. There was nothing there. So there were no digital interfaces when somebody goes on site. So people are interacting with all these great digital tools and websites to find the property. And then they go on site and then it's a leasing agent with a notebook and printouts and highlighters. And it was like this total brick and mortar experience. And so we just saw a lot of opportunity in the leasing office to help modernize the experience and also just to help make it a friendlier experience for prospective residents, especially in those generations that are more comfortable with digital interfaces and prefer to have really accurate information at their fingertips. And so that was kind of the idea behind moving into the leasing offices.
Well, it sounds like you were on this like entrepreneurial journey for quite some time before Pynwheel, but how long? And look, there's ups and downs all the time. So ask Reed or I, and on any given week, we may give a different answer to this. But how long before at Pynwheel, you felt like, hey, this, we're no longer falling off the cliff, but we're in a good place, and we got a good thing going?
Well, in 2014, 2015, we were raising money. That was my whole plan, was to raise money. Mm-hmm. And I talked to a lot of companies that were interested in either investing in Pynwheel or merging with Pynwheel or acquiring Pynwheel. And it was very time consuming, as you can imagine. I met with a lot of really great, smart people. And we ended up getting to a point with a company where they offered us terms. And in the meantime, I kind of had this backup plan of, what if we don't raise money? How are we going to survive? I also, around the same time, went to an MTech conference, and there was a panel of entrepreneurs who shall go unnamed. And one of the questions given to these entrepreneurs was, what would you do differently? And I think 2 out of 3 of them, and 2 people who I really respected, said, I wouldn't raise money. There's a lot of ways that you can make money in this industry. And as soon as you take money from VC firms or hedge funds, it changes the nature of your business and it changes the nature of your position. So that, plus the fact that we had a really decent backup plan, really changed the whole direction that we were going. We didn't take the funds from the company. We decided to continue to bootstrap, reorganized the company, and repositioned it. And that was in 2016. And so that was really the year that things flipped for us, and we started. We got really comfortable that year, because before then we were just like trying to grow and grow and grow as fast as we could to chasing those VC dollars. But then as soon as we decided not to, everything kind of came into place, and everything was much easier.
Well, funny enough, we met you at Optech or MTech
4
years ago or 3 years ago, and we didn't take money from you because we knew you were a shark. We were like, this is going to end badly. Now, that is how we met Jennifer. Like, she raised her hand in the back of the room after we presented. It was like, are you guys seeking investors? And at the time, Reed and I were like, we hadn't settled on if we were going to take money or not take money. So we were excited for, I guess, your kudos and interest in front of the crowd. But yeah, we've mostly avoided that ourselves. And I think we're very thankful.
I don't blame you. Obviously, if I'm offering, I do think you should really consider my investment. but I love your product. It's something that I had thought about forever as something that the industry really needs. And so you guys know I'm just a huge, huge fan. So
yeah, well, thanks. Well, Reed, I keep wanting to dive into the entrepreneurial story, but I feel like I'll give you a chance to ask a few questions before we get into what Pynwheel's up to now.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to go there because I didn't want to wait too long to give Jennifer a chance to talk about kind of the big news. We joke and we don't. We love to break news here on this podcast, but usually that means like a day, if not a week behind. And in your case, I think we might be 2 weeks behind. But so I don't know now that I've said that, whether I can't pull that back and ask more questions, or whether we should just like, let her talk a little bit about what's new at Pynwheel, because I guess I can tie this to the whole like journey, right? Like what you thought the company was going to be pre and post like decision on the venture to now, as you said, you're a product person and how that's evolved. Because for us, I mean, Fiona came pretty quickly, and we had it almost on the back burner when we started the company, but man, has it changed, but there still is that core functionality. So maybe, again, this is a good segue. You can talk a little bit about the past and now where you're at and what you see ahead as far as how the product roadmap has changed for you from the time you founded to where you are now.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of like what you were saying with being in multifamily, and you always think about other verticals that you could go into, but it's so good in multifamily that you're like, this is such a great industry. And there are so many other companies that start in other verticals and then find multifamily, and they're like, oh no, this is the best industry to be in. It was kind of the same way with products with me when I was talking about finding the leasing office, because originally when I started Pynwheel, even before I started Pynwheel, there were a couple other times I tried to start up a company that did a product. The idea of the product was very similar to Fiona, where I wanted to build a central system where people could track and manage their marketing and purchase marketing, and also that would manage all their other little digital marketing tools like websites and touchscreens and mobile applications and all those things. Because I think in this industry, like I said, there are so many different marketing options, and it is very challenging to, one, know about all of them, and two, really accurately compare all of them from one market to another, or from one asset to another. So that was actually kind of the original plan. But because we needed to make money immediately, we started with developing websites, which we don't do anymore, but we did that when we started. And then developing the touchscreen application. And then the idea was to create all the different digital interfaces and just have them managed from the same dashboard. So we did end up creating this awesome dashboard, which was my dream, to manage everything really, really simply from the same place, which we have done. But in the meantime, like I said, we found so much success in the leasing office and found that there was such a vacuum there that then we just kind of placed all of our focus inside the leasing office. And then a couple years ago, well, a few years ago now, in 2016, 2017, I started thinking about research that we had done with consumers and what they would really want, and came to the conclusion that what they would really want is to not have to necessarily interface with the leasing staff and schedule their tours during leasing hours. And so I just started sketching, like literally pencil and paper, Sharpie and paper, this idea for a self-guided tour application, and brought it to prospective residents who loved it, brought the idea to our clients who hated it. Nobody was interested in self-guided tours at all at the time. We ended up developing it anyway because I just, the economy had been so good for so long, which is great for touchscreens because they're put into new developments all the time. But I thought eventually the economy isn't going to be as strong. And so we need to come up with a product that also helps multifamily companies during a down economy. And so one of those things might be this self-guided tour idea that I had. So we did like a soft launch of it in 2019, and everybody was so interested in it and everybody was talking about it. And there were tons of, it was always a topic at the conferences, but very few companies were ready to try it. So we set up a pilot with a handful of properties. It was about 15 properties that had signed up to try it. And my goal was to do a really long, like a 6-month pilot, get tons of feedback from their staff, get tons of feedback from the residents, and then take it to the industry and say, this really works, fix things along the way, and then say, we've perfected this and this really works. And then, a couple months into our pilot, COVID hit, and then suddenly everybody needed a self-guided tour application. So really changed things at Pynwheel. And then at that time, our biggest challenge was that every single property has fob readers all over the place. So they have fob readers to get in the front door. They have fob readers to get into all of their common areas. And every property has different fob reader systems, meaning like it's different, not even from one company to the next, but from one property to the next in the same portfolio. And so that was the big nut that we wanted to crack. And so we just recently came up with a solution for it, and I'm super excited about it, that we now are able to retrofit any existing fob reader. So properties don't have to swap out their fob readers, which is a very time intensive and very expensive thing to do, to go in and swap out all of your fob readers. Plus it affects all of your residents. It affects your staff. It's just a huge inconvenience and very expensive. So because of this new product that we're offering, now properties don't need to do that at all. We can use our existing fob readers. When temporary visitors come, they use their phone as a fob at the fob readers. It's very secure because we're only giving them temporary access just for the length of their self-guided tour. And we do some screening as well before they can take the tour to make sure that, we verify their identity and do some things to make sure that they should be on site. And we're just so excited about the solution.
Yeah, well, it sounds super cool. And obviously with COVID, everything has taken off regarding virtual or self-guided tours. I mean, either or, right? And
Right.
Sounds like you had the idea 4 or 5 years ago and started working on it now. Quick question, and we'll get into some of the details because I think your new offering is super cool with the phone access. But was it any help that you guys were already Pynwheel when you go to launch this? Because Reed and I struggle with this conversation ourselves. Is like, oh, we have this new product idea. Can we really do it as the same company, or do we need to be a new company? So was there enough connectivity between Pynwheel and self-guided that it actually was good that you already had Pynwheel and all the infrastructure and stuff you'd already done? Or I don't know, would you have been better off if you had just, I guess, launched a fresh start?
That is a really good question. We considered both ways. From a brand perspective, I think it would have been okay either way, introducing this new product, but from a technology perspective, it was essential that we were building it off of our original technology. So we had in 2016 rebuilt our backend system and our dashboard and rebuilt everything in our database, and that's what we built Self-Tour on. And so that was essential because that technology is tried and true, has been tested, is a very mature technology. And so when we in 2020, when we were when self-guided tours became very popular overnight, we were able to offer a product to clients that was a product that we really believed in and that we knew was a good, solid product. Whereas other companies were kind of like flipping the switch and trying to provide self-guided tours and throwing something together really quickly. The fact that our backend system had a few years in it of us perfecting it was critical. And so building it on top of the Pynwheel system was really important and definitely the right thing to do, and really couldn't have been replicated or extracted.
Yeah. And you guys are so popular, everyone's probably been hearing the dinging, but that's every time you get an order is that we hear your phone go off, right? So you've had 5 or 6 orders go off now.
Yes, exactly. I'm so glad you picked up on that.
I thought it was me at first. I'm usually guilty of that. Like the first 6 podcasts we did, David was like, "Can you please mute your text alerts?"
That was so funny.
But I've gotten better since then.
Yeah.
Go
well,
ahead,
yeah, Reed, while she handles that, I'll let you ask the next question.
Well, on the product research, I was curious about that, and that is tough. Sounded like frustrating at times, and that's where we're at. Like when you have quick product development, which is common, like obviously in the early stages in particular, like figuring out, what to listen to and what not to, like what's noise, what matters, etc. So I don't know. David's actually reading a book right now, or maybe finished up. I think it's the mom. I forget
the mom test.
The mom test, yeah. So you can share some of that. I'm sure Jen would be interested to hear it. Also being a mom, but have you refined that approach? I guess. How do you get feedback now? Are you? I don't want to say past that stage because you're never past that stage, but how did you approach that process? Has it changed much since or when you guys first started? Product feedback.
Yes. Yeah. So the way we prioritize updates with all of our products, but particularly with Self-Tour right now, since that's our new product that we're focusing on from a development standpoint, is one, what will make the experience best for consumers, which sometimes creates a conflict because sometimes properties want it to act a certain way that will help them, but it's not the best experience for consumers. And so when there's a conflict there, the consumers always win. And if there's something that we're working on that will make the experience better for consumers and something that we're working on that will make things better for properties, again, the consumer always wins. So one is what makes it the best experience for the consumer, because that's what we're trying to do, is to help people tour and lease apartments. And then second will be things that our clients want and our clients need. And then third will be things that make it easier to update and to be more efficient. Because one of the things that we're really good at, and we want to make sure that we continue to be good at, is we are really good at being efficient with our time so that we can really gracefully handle a big volume of clients and a big volume of products without having a million people.
Sorry, Reed,
I turned off my notifications and they're still popping up.
Reed, have you seen the new WeWork documentary on Hulu?
No, I'm assuming this has something to do with notifications or text alerts, because my head was going to Seinfeld.
Oh, okay.
The episode with the like Russian diplomat and like Elaine's BlackBerry won't stop going off and he can't find it, and he's like losing his mind. Then when he finally does, he tosses it out the limo.
Yeah.
Anyways, what's your reference here?
Well, in the new WeWork documentary, which for those that follow tech are probably pretty up to date on it, but the story is even more egregious than what I had heard from the rest of the news. But it's just a it's a crap show. Anyways, but Adam Newman, one of the two founders, he had a fascination with gongs because, and you'll love this, Reed, but he grew up overseas. I think I can't remember where, Israel, I think, but the only American television he could get was basically reruns of Animal House and The Gong Show. And so he had this fascination with gongs. And so in all these WeWorks, he had gongs installed. And then they, for any excuse that he could think of, like, oh, new tenant at WeWork, we got to set off the gong. And so, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
That's
Jennifer's
hilarious.
notifications.
That's my ding. I think I turned it off now.
Okay.
I think I actually turned off the notifications instead of just closing my messages. So
yeah, no problem. Well, I think what makes your solution really unique, as you said, is that it is so consumer focused. Because I think a lot of the other self-guided tours I've seen are, like you said, either kind of patchwork together. It's like we just need to find the down and dirty solution to get this live, or a lot of people just keep looking at like what would the property manager or leasing agent like more than what the consumer would like. And to your point, like some of your videos do a good job of showing off how simple it is for the user, but while still making sure that some of the stuff's handled from the management side, like you're saying, the screening, right? So why don't you take us through the process of, like, let's say that someone offers a Pynwheel tour, the sign up, the background check, how fast can this whole thing go down before like a consumer can just start walking through the building and being guided along on what matters to them?
Yeah. So we really focus on trying to make things simple also for our clients, specifically for property managers, because we know that property managers are very busy and have a million things on their plate. So anything that we can do to make it simpler for them, we will employ that. To get started, so obviously we need a contract in place first, we need payment, and then we do a launch call with the whole team. So that's really important. Everybody on the team needs to understand what they're signing up for and what they can expect. And then once we do the launch call, then the property manager or whoever is responsible for getting the project up and running will have access to submit some content to us. So we need like the property map, floor plan images, photos, that kind of thing. And then they will also have a project form to fill out. The project form allows them to identify the first version of what they want the tour to look like. So they'll tell us what stops they want on their tour and give us some description and information about those stops. And then once my team has received all that, then it goes into production. Production takes 2 to 4 weeks. Actually, it's really more like on the 2-week side for us to get the first version of the self-guided tour up and running. In the meantime, we have worked with the maintenance team on site to help us identify what access they need. So we'll figure out what fob readers that we need to provide access to, and then what kind of digital locks they have on their units, and if they need to swap any of those out. We'll have all the hardware shipped to them and installed while we're setting up the self-guided tour. And so within 2 to 4 weeks, they should be totally up and running. Then we'll have another call with the on-site staff where they will actually go through the tour as if they're a prospect and just make sure that everything makes sense. One of the most important parts of our product is the interactive map, which has step-by-step directions and wayfinding inside. And none of the other products have this, and I can tell you why, because it's very complicated to set it up. But obviously that's crucial, right? Because our production people are looking at a map and they can look at the path and go, yep, that makes sense. But you really have to be on site and walk that path and verify that it's getting you where you want to go and that you don't get confused along the way.
Yeah. Go ahead, Reed.
Well, did you say 2 to 4 weeks?
Yeah.
For production. So how does that scale then? You must have templates or something. Like if you're going to one portfolio, let's just say, I mean, the backlog would be insane, right? If that's what it requires for each property. So do you come with templates in hand where it's like for similar units, like comps, like this will accelerate the production time, or does it not matter? No matter what, you have to, each building is a 2 to 4 week turnaround. You follow me, right? Like what if somebody said, this is awesome, I want to put it on, I have 30 buildings
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, no, we have the bandwidth both in staff and both in our automated system to be able to crank them out regardless of the volume. And that's really what I was saying, that we had perfected in our backend system, which means that we were able to bring this to market and be able to handle whatever volume comes our way. But there is always going to be a manual part of the setup process because every property is different. And so we have to address that manually. And then as much as we can, we automate in the backend system so that it just makes it quicker and more efficient for our team. And then they go back and check everything and make sure everything's correct.
Cool. Sorry if I missed that. So that's pretty amazing. You can do that all in parallel. So 100 come on at a time. Theoretically, within 4 weeks, all 100 could be done.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is impressive. But is part of that because, as you're saying, the interactive map, I think, is what really got me with your guys. Like, I do like the idea of no one needing a fob and not the hardware replacement cost of the current like lock systems and stuff, which you guys have solved. But when you see like the videos that you guys have built on this, and it's like there is a map and it shows you the dot where it's going and stuff, that, as you're saying, is really complicated, but and hard to do. I feel like the other providers have to have all of these other beacons and stuff so they know where the human is located, so that they know like when to do what. Because you guys have taken the time to solve the hard problem, the wayfinding part, because you don't, that also helps you not have to install additional hardware, right? Because you really don't have additional wayfinding stuff, right?
Yeah, we really wanted to be able to offer a solution that we could get up and running in a very short period of time, and which means not installing additional hardware and stuff. And also, number two, that's flexible. That's really important. Again, that's different for consumers than it is for properties. As a property, I probably want every single person to come through and see the stops that I want them to see in the order I want them to see. But the consumer wants more flexibility. And so we needed to be able to offer that to the consumer. And then also the property also enjoys the flexibility of being able to change things as needed. So if the pool's closed, it's no big deal. It's super easy to change it. If your descriptions you feel like aren't hitting the notes you want them to hit, super easy to change them on the fly, and they're immediate.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So one, it sounds like your hard cost compared to some of the other solutions would be less. Plus, like you have the flexibility later to keep modifying things.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. I do have one last thing. I feel like with the touch screen that you have, the Pynwheel touch screen, that the original product, I feel like once that beast is installed, they're never removing it. It's like that is staying there for all time. With this, because you don't have all the extra hardware stuff, I wonder if this won't be as sticky in that way, right? Where it's like, oh, we don't even see the people, we don't touch the people, and there's no like we didn't have to do some major modification on the building. So I wonder if that, long term post COVID, if properties just will be less sticky on it. That just one concern.
So it's so interesting that you bring that up, because one of the things that we have learned in the past year is that the prospective residents love it. So if you implement it the way it's supposed to be implemented, which is you put the Pynwheel interactive map on your website and the Pynwheel scheduling tool on your website, so that when somebody's ready to take a tour, they click on schedule a visit and it goes through Pynwheel. So they're selecting their time and date, and then they get notifications telling them to download the application, what to expect, directions to the property. The prospective residents use it, love it, and then properties see an increase in tours. They see an increase in tour to lease ratios, and it's just a very valuable tour for the prospects. And so because it's such a valuable tour for the prospects, then it makes it harder for properties to get rid of, because they're seeing all the benefits of it. If it's not implemented that way, we do have a lot of clients that they want to use their own scheduling tool, and then they're not sending the text notifications. They're not communicating with their prospects the same way. And maybe the prospects are showing up and they don't have the application downloaded, then they don't know what to expect. Then it's not as good of an experience. And then it won't be as sticky, because it's like I said, all about the prospective residents having the best experience. And if they have the best experience, then the properties will want to keep it. But if they don't have the best experience, then that's when I think that we'll see some properties who are, maybe are not keeping it on site. We also have a really easy contract with this where it's just a 30-day out and it's month to month. So it's really easy to try it out, and it's really easy to stop using it if you don't want to use it anymore.
That's strong. I wouldn't have expected that from like the setup time and all that stuff. I mean, that just makes it like a no friction type of sale.
Right.
I have two questions, and we asked these, I think, last week with Everett. You remember, or do you know Everett Lynn? He's CEO, founder of Minify.
Yeah, I have met him.
Because he was part of that class, I'll say now. I mean, you came before us, but we were all at MTech. That's where we met. Yeah. And we just had him on last week. And one of the questions I asked him that I'll now pose to you is, what do you lead with as you're talking to, and I imagine it's usually C-suite for you, but correct me if I'm wrong on that, on who you're trying to, grow business with, or who you're talking to. So there's several benefits that you've already listed. What do you feel most confident about, where it's like, hey, in adopting this technology, this platform, and Pynwheel ultimately as a partner, you should see your conversions improve, like, your lead to lead, your resident feedback, your whatever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, just fill it in. So I'm curious, like, what you lead with, and then I'll hold so I don't forget, and you don't forget the second part or the second question. So I'll let you answer that one first.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. We're very good at increasing the tour to lease ratio. I think that's really important, and also increasing tours. And then the other thing is just modernizing the tour experience. So it certainly helps to decrease costs, and it certainly helps to increase revenue when you're implementing these solutions.
Yeah, cool. The other question, and this is something I'm really interested to hear you talk about, since you've been in the industry longer, certainly, than me and David, but and I feel like Everett, had said he's been in the industry for at least a decade, but what do you think is at the root of why technology isn't moving faster with multifamily? And a lot of people have said in the last year, because of COVID, it's accelerated some things, and maybe self-guided tours is one of those. But I have my own theories, but I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and ask you, what do you think is at the root of that, and how much has it changed since COVID? Are you seeing, a little bit more early adopters than before? And maybe it's too early to say, but anyways.
Oh, no, it's not too early to say. We for sure saw a huge increase in it. I think that COVID actually pushed us past the early adopter phase with a lot of these companies, where we just went through it really quick. So now it's more table stakes. But to answer your question, it's so interesting because I've been in the industry for so long, and I've seen so much change, and it's such a more high-tech industry than it was when I started in the industry, that I don't see, I certainly don't have as much frustration as I know some other people do with the industry of like, oh my gosh, why are we lagging so far behind in technology? Because we've improved leaps and bounds since I started in the industry. But to answer your question, I will answer your question just purely based on feedback that I've heard from our clients, and the feedback that everybody gives me consistently is that the buck stops at the on-site staff. And the reason it stops at the on-site staff is because they feel inundated with change. So they have been given directives of what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to accomplish. And then there are so many new ideas and changes and things that they can implement, and they just get backlogged with trying to implement new technology on site, and they feel underwater with trying to implement so much new technology. So I think that's a big part of it. I think that I also talk to a lot of on-site staff who are self-described technophobes who don't really like implementing new technology. But in most cases, they're really not that bad. But like, once you introduce them to technology, they're actually fine, and they do a great job with technology. But I think that there is a little bit of hesitance to implement new technology because people don't feel confident in using it. Whereas typically when they're introduced to it, if it's simple enough, which it should be, then it's fine. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll let David give you some of his. Obviously, I think you're dead on. I mean, Everett brought that up too. I want to say just how important the on-site team is and that it's often overlooked because they are not the decision makers. So you end up spending time with, various members of C-suite, marketing teams, et cetera, and they're not there on site to really, tell you how that's going to go. And so it's often overlooked. I think there is also, we all have, I've witnessed it now, but this huge rush, of technology that's hit over the last several years. And so inevitably, that is going to cause, some, challenges just where you can't test everything. And so I think at that MTech, we heard about that, like the importance of integration, knowing, who and how to kind of navigate that is just critical. But at the end of the day, they have to pick some spots because Everett, I think was talking, not to keep bringing him up, but he was just like, we came at it with $1 per unit and just figured that was a no-brainer for what we were bringing to the table. But it's like, yeah, there's 20 more behind you in line that are all coming with the same offering, same kind of price structure, and they can't do all of that. My worry is that with so much of that and them having to like be really selective is inevitably a lot of these entrepreneurs and new technology won't be able to last, because they're not going to have the runway. So if they don't pick up the pace, if the industry doesn't that automatically then mean that there's going to be less new technology because you just don't have, the industry doesn't have the patience for it. It's this kind of crazy cycle that we're in right now.
Yeah.
So that being said, I was glad to know that, Amenify and some others that we had heard about earlier still around, but
we're still around.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Pricing too, because when I started, I was like, well, we're just going to price per tour, because if I owned an apartment building, that's what I would want to pay. I would want to pay per tour or per success, per lease. That's obviously the best thing for the owners. But the more management companies we talk to, managers are like, no, we don't want a price for success model because it's too difficult to budget. I need something to put in I need a line item for my budget. And so we revamped our pricing structure for managers, but there is a little bit of a conflict there, I think, probably between what the managers want because it makes their lives easier and what the owners want because it makes them more profitable. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I do also think that I have heard from our clients too that there are managers that are feeling concerned that a lot of their responsibilities are going away or being replaced by technology. Mm-hmm. And so I think that probably creates some natural resistance as well.
Well, proof points are hard to come by, I think for a lot of these platforms, like in an early enough time, again, even if you get the opportunity, get the shot, it's like, in 6 months you show tangible results that the operator then can sign off and start to spread across their portfolio. And that's also not easy. So more and more are coming, I think to the table with like freemium models, ways where it's like, you don't have to pay, I'll pay you. And it will prove itself that way. But a lot of the platforms are based around the idea of efficiency and labor. And that's one of the hardest things to actually touch. It's like, theoretically, I freed up more time for my on-site team because they are overwhelmed. But how do you really prove that out? So that's a big challenge as well. David, anything to add there?
Well, I think you guys are right. Everett was saying his estimate is that they spend 2% on R&D. And so like, and to your point, Reed, like we sometimes don't give the startups enough time. If you're not going to do the R&D, then someone else has to do the R&D and then sell it to you. But that person that does the R&D either needs a very liquid market to where they can raise capital, like Jennifer was saying was challenging for her 5-6 years ago, or they need enough customers that are going to stick with them and kind of deal with the not fully baked product. But they talk about a non-early adopter. This industry is not an early adopter. And Reed and I were talking about this after the Everett episode, but it's a lot of it's because they don't have to be, right? Because the status quo is so low and yet profits are so high that and return on investment that they don't have to try harder. But the more, I think there's eventually going to be an acceleration when enough properties have gotten on board with self-guided tours, for example, like you're saying, Jennifer, then at some point everybody's got to get on board because they're going to be the one person that doesn't have it, and therefore
the only thing that properties care about is being competitive in their market. Absolutely. So if they don't need new technology to be competitive, they're not going to spend the time and the money on it. But more importantly, I think to the managers, the time on it.
Well, maybe now's a good time to insert this question as we talk about competition. Smart technology, I mean, it's still evolving, but that's been a wave, right? And so I wonder, can you have you tried to kind of self-guided tour with smart technology? I know obviously Digible and Pynwheel are talking about, how we can partner together, but you're seeing more and more with entrepreneurs. It's like, if I can't get the runway, I don't have the liquid. It's like, I've got to find partners that I can line up with that can perhaps, shortcut that time for adoption. And it would seem logical to me where it's like, hey, if you're investing in this kind of smart technology, it only makes sense that you'd also, enable self-guided tours.
Yes. And to answer a question that David asked earlier, that's how I started with $3,000 and getting tables, is through partnerships. That's always been what we've done, is we really focus on what we do well, and then we find partners that can help with all of the other things that make the product complete. So we do have our own access solution, which I think is going to be amazing for the industry. I really think it's going to make a huge difference to people to not have to swap out like smart apartment technology. But we do have some great partners in that vein as well. So we have partnered with Dwello, and Dwello goes in and they will create whole smart apartment systems. Like, it's a really great white glove experience for the properties that they work with, that they will go in and retrofit existing apartments, or of course for new developments, they'll work with them as well to just make a whole system that is a huge benefit for the residents and staff, and also helps the property management companies and the property owners to run their properties more efficiently. So they have now included Pynwheel Self-Tour as a part of their product offering, so they can bundle it all together. We have an integration with Latch. So we have a lot of properties that use Latch, and now they can use Latch along with Pynwheel Self-Guided Tour. And then we have integrations with all of the off-the-shelf kind of locks like Schlage and Kwikset and Yale. And then of course we have all of our existing partnerships that we've had forever with Yardi and Entrata and RealPage and all of those systems. So everything baked together, we're just trying to offer a solution for any property, regardless of what technology they're using.
Cool.
Well, what do you think, not to skip too far ahead, Jennifer, but we always like to ask past, present. We've done that. Now future, right? So where does the industry go from here? Like, it sounds like you're going to think self-guided tours become a must-have for all properties. I'm curious if that's the entire stack, like even, down to affordable, BCD or not. But what does the next, let's say, 10 years look like? Is there any new development, or do you think it's going to be like catching up to, the self-guided tour thing?
I think that back to what you were saying about how the industry tends to be slow to adopt new technology. This is what we've seen with self-tour, and this is what I think we're going to continue to see, which is that the prospective residents want it and even expect it now. And most properties do not offer it, or they offer some kind of lightweight solution just to kind of check the box, but it's not really a great consumer experience. So I think that is going to be huge. And then I think as a part of that, access is just so much more important. So when you think about providing temporary access for self-guided tours, a lot of companies that we talk to are like, we need to start offering self-guided tours right now. And then because of that, they start thinking about, okay, well, that means that we need to have digital access. And what is our digital access strategy going to be? But then once you get there, then you think about all of the other temporary visitors that you have that could need digital access. So you have delivery people, you have first responders who could need temporary access to get into somebody's property. You have, people who are delivering groceries, or people who are delivering Uber Eats or Delivery Dash or whatever, that also would need temporary access to a property, that the property might want to give them access, and also want to give them directions. And so I think that's kind of the big opportunity that is being opened right now in the industry. And then I think once that opportunity is opened, then you can start thinking about, well, if all of these different people have temporary access to the properties, then do we move to having kind of floating staff where you have your same maintenance crew, but they're managing maintenance at a portfolio instead of living like either literally or figuratively living at a property and just servicing the one property.
Wow, I dig it. That's a fantastic answer. Reed, I feel like, well, I figured that answer may have just wound you up and let you go because of some of the conversations you've had about about how the marketplace will change over the next 30 years.
Yeah, that is a great answer. It's super exciting. And, it makes me think of our friend, and I think it was from AIM, the first AIM we went to, Steven something. He has a portfolio up in Minneapolis, and or I think it was in Minnesota, but he was talking about and it sounds not dystopian, but, humanless or without, like humanless, like on our team, like portfolio. It wasn't just a team. But I think, when we talked to him more, he was like, well, of course, there will still be, maintenance people, that have to service the property, and, you'll have to figure a way with packages and stuff. But it was somewhat what Jennifer's saying, which is like you could have them floating, basically rovers. By the way, my pen just exploded in my, so I think that's really fun to think about. I'm super intrigued to hear people talk, as David just said, about the next 20 or 30 years and how, all this new technology will have us operating and thinking, in a very different way. But then, that the human element will always, I think, be there. And now I sound almost not contradictory, but we talked to a locator.
No. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Well, then I'll let you piggyback here. But I was giving him not a hard time, but I was just like, aren't you worried about, with everything that's going on being kind of displaced, like your whole like world and industry? And he was like, absolutely not, and I don't know, I forget what he likened it to, like a shoe salesman or something. He's like, lots of people are buying more shoes now online than they ever were before, but you still see shoe salesmen. Maybe that's a terrible comparison, but you get my point. It's like, people still want to talk to somebody. So it's just a matter of like, what does that workforce look like? Are we going to see an 80% reduction, a 50% reduction? Will it plateau at a certain level? And a consultant that I think you're familiar with, Elaine Williams, she's worked with us on and off for years. And she was saying that she thinks some of that workforce reduction, like at a pretty, significant level, is going to start to happen. And COVID may have pushed that forward. I don't know if that, if they'll surface in other ways, meaning that they'll just be new jobs that open up in multifamily, or if those are going to go away permanently. But she's been hearing, like with some of the bigger, NMHC top 20, that those are some things they're definitely considering. So yeah, really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I will tell you how we hire. And so I always imagine that the industry will kind of shift this way too, or how we solve our resource problems, is that we solve as many problems as we possibly can with technology at Pynwheel. So we're always looking for ways that we can automate our processes. And if the technology can handle it, then we put it on the technology. That makes sure that we're decreasing human error and that we're increasing efficiency. So we do that as much as possible. And then we hire people to do things that humans have to do. So instead of hiring people that will do what technology can do, we're hiring people who are personable. So they're working with people, and they have the people skills to help manage people and keep our customers really happy and make sure that we're communicating well, and that kind of thing that technology really can't replace that personal interaction. And we're hiring people who can do, like I said, some of the more unique aspects of setting things up on a property by property basis. And so I imagine that in the future, properties will hire and manage things the same way, that they will not be hiring people who are doing things that technology can do, but they will be hiring people to do things that people have to do, like interact with residents and help residents feel like the management company and the property cares about their problems, which will never go away. People still want to feel like there's a person there that cares about whatever their issue is.
Yeah, I feel like there's always, like when Amazon came on, on people who are like, well, no one's going to go to the local store anymore. And certainly this last year has been really rough on local commerce. But there
And
are
so
people.
good for Amazon.
Yeah. But there are still people that want that, like, like you said, white glove service earlier. Like there's still people that want to talk to a human and interact. And I feel like in, I'll even say like the millennials and in my generation, a lot of times we didn't want to talk to anybody. It's like, I'll just order on Amazon so I don't have to talk to somebody.
Yes.
And then at some point it's like, well, no, actually, I don't want it to feel cold. Like I'm just checking into a hotel. I'm tired of hotels, right? I want it to feel more like a community. And so at that point I may want, more handholdy, someone that knows me and seems friendly. And it's not just like I'm in a hotel for a year at a time. So I think it'll go back and forth.
What I would want, like just given the hotel example, what I want is to be able to check into a hotel on my phone and open my hotel door with my phone, and it recognizes me, and I don't have to stand at the desk and wait for somebody, and I don't have to get checked in, and I don't, like, my card's not going to stop working, and I don't have to go through a process of checking out. I just want everything on my phone so that I can check in and check out. But then if you also have a concierge at the hotel who says, good morning, Miss Cyphers, do you need somewhere to find a place to have breakfast? Even better.
Yeah. I think go ahead, David.
Well, Nicole and I were just, I was taking my scuba certification a week ago, and we went and stayed at a nice hotel in Utah. And I called for room service because we got in late, and it was like, all right, this is like the second time in my life I've gotten room service because usually I go and explore the area. And they were like, cool, what room are you? And I was like, I cannot believe that you don't even know what room I am. Yeah, I was really blown away. So to your point, that's exactly what I want to get in easily on my phone, but then like have the deets about me whenever I call you and want something else. But sorry, go ahead, Reed.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, like, that example with the hotel, what would keep hotels from making that change? Because that seems so practical to me. Like, who wouldn't want that, Right. I guess it's, leaving the optionality, which then theoretically I would assume allows you to reduce staff by a little bit, maybe not completely. But I think there's also the upsell that, is counted on with the human interception, if you will, or element, where it's like, this is our chance to, build a relationship, get them in our points program, potentially add, some services, some spot, whatever it is, I'm trying to stick with the hotel, but, can that, so you may win on the short term with like efficiencies with labor, but then do you compromise, potentially the top line and more revenue avenues by not having the human, intercept the consumer? And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, obviously more and more people are getting super comfortable and, let's set Amazon on the side. But as far as like transacting, along the way, and that's something, and you remember this, Jen, that we talked about with Fiona, but will there be a day where people are comfortable transacting like with digital services? Because right now, we're starting to see a little bit of it, which is exciting, meaning that you would actually purchase an AdWords campaign, know what your budget is, get creative sorted out, and never actually talk to somebody. And it's actually, kind of commoditized. So, but I think it's, we won't see that like really take off for a few more years. But I think that's one of the questions you have to ask yourself. A lot of this stuff is still like proving itself out. Like there's going to be, I feel like, landmark case studies, and we'll see that probably the next couple of years with self-guided tours, where it's like, now there's no question. This isn't just, a matter of FOMO and competition. It's like the results speak for themselves. There's enough, within the industry that have adopted this. And it's clear that, you're going to see a 20% lift on your tour to, lease like ratios or whatever that may be. But in the short term, you have to, I don't want to say gamble, but some are going to be willing to explore, some aren't. I mean, that's Captain Obvious there speaking, but you know what I'm saying, where it's like, a lot of this technology, there's going to be some big proof points coming in the next few years that I think will really start to speed things up.
Yeah. I mean, change is hard. I think change is hard for people, and change is hard for organizations. And it takes it takes the right person to not kind of back away from opportunities that change that require change. So I hope, that's one of the things that looking back on, there were so many challenges, and 2020 was so difficult for so many reasons. But one of the silver linings is that we were all forced to change, like ready or not. Organizations, individuals had to embrace change and look for opportunities. And I think that there will be some really positive things that come out of that.
Totally.
Well, I have two last things, and then we'll let you ask or talk about anything you want to talk about, Jennifer, so I'll let you prime yourself. But first thing is, you had mentioned early on about deciding to make the that you didn't want to go venture and you wanted to remain private.
Yeah.
Has that outlook changed at all? Is Pynwheel, is this what Jennifer's happy doing for the next 10, 20 years? Or at some point, do you guys expect that you will get acquired? Because, we've had a number of folks take swings at us. So I can only imagine with how Self-Guided Tours are taking off that you guys must have the same thing. But
yeah,
are you guys holding fast? Do you have a clear vision?
I do get a lot of people reaching out to me asking about investing in Pynwheel or about acquiring Pynwheel, and I really did consider it in 2020 because we had it was such an interesting time, meaning a lot of businesses were really struggling, and we came out of 2020 really strong. But what happened when I decided not to take money in 2016 was magical, and that is that probably you guys went through the same thing, and that is that I stopped worrying about what investors might think about Pynwheel and just started focusing on how do I make the strongest company and the strongest products. And it really, really helped me to be able to focus and make ultimately better decisions for the company, which investors, of course, want. But there's this weird dance where they always ask for things that make you change focus and do things in a way that you wouldn't necessarily do it. So my goal is always to make the company the strongest company that it is, and my first goal is always to make the product the best. That's always my focus. Is if we have the best products, then the other things will fall into place. And so if that someday leads to some company coming and acquiring Pynwheel and it's a really great fit, then great. But I'm certainly not looking for it or banking on it. I'm just trying to day by day, year by year, make the best decisions to make the company the strongest. And if I end up owning it and running it forever, that's great. And if it ends up looking like the best opportunity is for it to be a part of some other portfolio, that's great too. It's not really driving my thoughts or my decisions.
Yeah, well, that's a great answer. Reed, you are muted there. Now we're waiting.
Sorry. I was just going to say, is there somebody you wouldn't sell to? You don't have to answer.
No, I had to think about it. Probably.
Well, this comes up, at least I've heard it more and more whenever we get in these conversations with other founders or owners of companies is, there is a list, or there's a few that they would just stay away from at all costs as far as ever, being acquired. And so I didn't
know that there's any that I would stay away from at all costs, but I would really consider, I do have to say, I really, really love my team. We have done such a great job of creating such a phenomenal team, and I'm really loyal to them and they're really loyal to me. And so I would definitely consider what the culture is like if there was a company that wanted to acquire Pynwheel. The company culture for my people is huge because our culture is very unique, and I don't want to make an abrupt change for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear you. I bet that's what most of the big companies, you'd expect them to hear that, right? Like their customers.
Right.
It's like, we hear that from everybody, but if we write you a check for this, I think you can get over culture. It's like, how much do you hold that line, because me and David feel the same way. It's like, we're so attached to our people and, our vision, and the idea of selling is getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
But if they came and the check was big enough, could we get over it? And I don't know. I guess you just have to cross that bridge when it comes.
I guess they do say everybody has a number.
Right.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine having a conversation with my employees and saying, now you have to go sit in a dark cubicle
right
8 to 10 hours a day. Sorry.
Well, this does lead to my last question, and then anything you want to talk about, Jennifer. But Reed played a very mean April Fool's joke on the company, and we had an all hands meeting, and he pretended that the company was selling. And
Oh my gosh, Reed.
it actually kind of made me sick to my stomach as I was hearing it, and I knew that wasn't true.
And you knew.
But I was like, all right, that's enough. I never want to go through that for real. He gave him some other good news.
Good. It was like a trial.
That's what I said. I didn't even tell Reed that yet, but Reed, I told Nicole, I was like, this was a trial run, and realized that's not how it would need to go down if we were going to do that.
Good. It's a good lesson.
Yeah. Well, I woke up that morning because we were actually announcing that we were going to be moving to a 4-day work week. So it was like this great announcement. We're going to be doing that in 2022, not a compressed, like the legit 4-day work week. And so I realized it was April 1st, and I came downstairs and I was just playing around with my daughters, and I was like, "Did you guys see the zebra running down the street? It's headed straight for the Schmidt's home." So my dad used to do that all the time, and it was amazing. It was embarrassing, frankly. I mean, all the way through high school, I was falling crap. It was like really bad, jokes, April Fool's jokes.
Oh yes, Wolverines in the backyard is what we got when we were kids. And that was like more than once.
Totally. My dog is howling in the back. I apologize. So anyways, the girls fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And I was like, you know what? This afternoon, we're going to have an all hands meeting. And instead of telling about the 4-day work week, I'm going to tell them we got sold. And I didn't tell David or Nicole. So they indulged me, or at least, were kind enough to let me go through with it. And yeah, people were freaking out. Like, it was like the chat was like, oh my God, what the hell, all this stuff. And then let them know, actually, we had some really good news. So it turned out well for them.
Oh my gosh, that's good that you got to flip it on them. I'm so curious to hear how that 4-day work week goes for you, because we introduced last year half-day Fridays. And of course, in 2020, there were nobody had anywhere to go, but nobody takes half-day Fridays. People just continue to work, even though we're supposed to stop working at noon on Fridays. Nobody does.
That was actually our concern. So we have some, as most people expect from us, we have some stuff around that. So we actually have staged into it, where currently we give them 2 hours a week, however they want. We ask them what their personal goals, what would help them feel more fulfilled. And then we record that each week, and we share that each Monday in the all hands meeting. So basically what we're trying to do is we don't want to give you a day off to just watch Netflix. It's we're giving you another day off to grow yourself. Yeah. So it's helped people re-engage with Big Brother, Big Sisters, and all these other things that they want to do. So we're staging into it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think one of the other keys is, for management ownership to do the same. And that's, I'll just openly say, going to be hard, in particular, I think, for David and I, because, we're still working, and by choice, not because anybody's forcing us, but, if we're actually demonstrating, that we have projects on the side that we're doing during the work week, that says a lot, instead of, do as I say, but not as I do. And, that's a process for us. But I think it excites them, and it makes them feel more comfortable about it, because there's lots of companies that say, oh, unlimited PTO, or, oh, we'll give you a half day, wink, wink, but if you actually lead by example, I think it'll make a big difference. So,
well, that is my goal right now, because we have unlimited PTO and it goes unused. And obviously 2020 was, we're also closed. We close a lot for holidays, and we're closed the week between Christmas and New Year's. We have people who are available to obviously respond to client requests and client needs. But this year, 2020 to 2021, it was nobody wanted to not work because there was nothing to do. You can't travel, nobody could see their friends and family. And so it wasn't actually a great benefit last year, but hopefully as things open up and people can go see friends and family, and can go golfing, and can do, like you were saying, brothers and sisters, and can get out and engage in the community more, it will be more of a benefit. But my goal is to kind of set up our structure so that people are actually taking advantage of those days, and they feel like they can leave the office and things won't fall apart.
Totally.
Well, Jennifer, as we wrap up here, is there anything else that, I don't know, you can flip the tables on us, something we didn't talk about from your side, whatever? Is there anything that we missed that we should get into before we get out of here?
No, this is great. I actually love that we're ending on culture, because that's that's one of the things that I feel really strongly in, is that we as a society are really are really busy. Everybody's really busy, and it's so easy to be busy and not take advantage of opportunities that we have in life and do things that are important to us and fulfilling to us. And so I love to hear that you guys are, that you're framing your organization around that idea too.
Yeah. Well, no one's going to want to buy us when they know that we only work 2 days a week.
Yeah, we're going to stop at 4 or try to.
Right.
Well,
David sat in that meeting and heard you saying that they were selling, and then suddenly he's like, "You guys were actually only going to work. Everybody work 12 hours a week. That's what we're doing. That way, you like for sure you're never going to sell, and you never have to live through that again."
Totally, yeah. That would do it. Well, I mean, for me, like, and it's not the reason we did this, but God, life has been, I hate saying it, but so depressing. The last year.
Yeah.
I mean, and it isn't just COVID. I mean, it just feels like the world's on fire, and so one of our 5 core values is happiness, and we put it right in the middle. It's like, above all else, we want our employees, we want ourselves to be happy, and
that's been a challenge in the last year.
Totally. This is just one more means to do it. But it's like, if we can provide, a little sanctuary, if you will, of happiness, like small company, but where people really feel good about themselves, feel respected, collaborative, and have a balance, like that's a win by itself, a big one. So hopefully it works out that way and we keep it up.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, I do want to hear about that mom test book, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, for anyone that's interested, it's called The Mom Test. It's pretty short. I did the Audible version. It's like 4 hours. And it's basically how to avoid the pitfalls of like building, of asking customers for feedback. So the quick down and dirty is like, if Jennifer, you went to your mom and said, "Hey, Mom, you like to cook, right? Yes, you use recipes. Yes, great. I'm going to build a recipe app. What do you think?" Your mom is like, she doesn't want to hurt your feelings. And she's like, "Of course, yeah. Recipe app would be awesome." But when you really dig in and ask the right questions, you find out, when was the last time your mom bought a recipe book? It's like 10 years ago or so, because usually they're gifted to her, right, by somebody at Christmas. So she doesn't actually go out and spend money. She's just given it. So then all of a sudden you realize, like, well, maybe building a recipe app that I'm going to charge monthly, maybe my mom wouldn't buy that. So it's got some very practical advice about how to do client interviews without seeding the question, and how to ignore, positive affirmation when it's like if Jennifer goes and has a call with a customer, and then she comes back to the office and people say, "Hey, Jennifer, how'd it go?" And you say, "Great." That's a bad answer. That means the interview went wrong. It means, like, instead you should be like, "Well, I learned this, this, and that." Right. And he's saying you don't build everything that clients ask for. You kind of just like listen to them and don't ask leading questions. And then when you come back, you build what you think is the right solution, because you can't build everything, or, nobody will be happy with the outcome.
Interesting.
So, it's a good book.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. Worth your 4 hours. Well, thanks for your time today, Jennifer. I think it's super cool what Pynwheel's doing. If people have any interest in learning more, they'll just go to it's pynwheel.com, I think, right? PYN?
Yep, pynwheel.com, Pynwheel with a Y, pynwheel.com, and there's lots of different ways to contact us. Every inquiry that we get gets a response within 1 business day, regardless. That's company policy. So we will get back to you.
Great. Well, thanks, Jennifer, and we'll catch you later.
Okay, thanks, guys.